Get back to our outstanding panel. They are the Honorable Ann Richards, the former Democratic governor of Texas. She's been with us all night, as has Howard Baker, the former Senate Majority Leader and former Chief of Staff in the Reagan administration. And Bob Woodward, the Pulitzer Prize-winning assistant managing editor of the Washington Post. Okay, we're down to 4. We had the misread on Florida. What do you make of it, Ann? Well, he has to win Florida, right?
Yeah,
You're a guy.
Yeah, he's got to win Florida, and he ought to win Oregon. And if he does, we win. If he doesn't, we lose.
Is Nader costing him it tonight?
I think Nader is cutting into him, but I don't think he's going to cost him the vote.
Senator?
I don't think so either. I think that, to begin with, it's a remarkable election. I have never seen anything like it, and frankly, I did not think it would be this close. But in the final analysis, it does come down to Florida and perhaps one other state, and that's just the way it is. And on Florida, with so many absentee ballots to be counted, I would bet, Larry, that it's tomorrow before we have a read on who's, it's already tomorrow.
25 minutes, it'll be
right.
tomorrow.
Unless the governor were to win the other 3 states.
Exactly.
And therefore win it without Florida.
But Florida really is key, and it's going to be tomorrow in all likelihood before we know the result of that. Now, there are all sorts of combinations where one or the other could win, but without Florida, it becomes extremely unlikely.
How big a fuss, Bob, will this misread make?
Well,
tomorrow.
You mean the initial miscall on Florida?
This would be a whole different picture right now.
You can't tell, but I mean the difficulty right now is yet another misread. Clearly, there are very few votes that are the difference between victory and defeat here. Absentee ballots floating around. The Bush campaign spokesman was making a good case. It seemed that maybe New Mexico was still in play. So somebody is likely to come out with the Dewey beats Truman headline and have to take that back.
But I don't think the question is going to be the miscall. I think the question is going to be if there were irregularities. When you've got a vote that is this close, and you have as much money and time and effort invested, there are going to be some deep discussions about what took place in Florida.
Missouri might change with St. Louis voting late.
It certainly might. Let me lovingly disagree with Ann about that. I don't think we've seen any signs of irregularity, and even if there were, I'm reminded of that judgment that Richard Nixon made when he chose not to contest the election, and you know, there were patent irregularities in the Illinois result at that time. I really do think that regardless of who wins, Gore or Bush, that the nation will unite behind them. I think they will have a mandate with United Nations the day after the election.
And the loser will
And I think the loser certainly ought to and almost certainly will coalesce behind the new leader.
Is this a case, Bob, where the media, the mainstream, as some critics call it media, was correct? They said we'd be up late. A lot of the others said, nah, it'd be over by 7:38. We'd be up late. We wouldn't know. Closest election ever.
Well, it turned out much more so, and I mean, it seems to be narrowing in a very bizarre way.
With a close popular vote.
I mean, what Howard Baker says is correct, but also it would really be nice when the election is over and everything is counted that there is clarity. It will be so much nicer if one candidate emerges and there is not this kind of ambiguity that lingers for decades as it did in the Nixon-Kennedy race of 1960.
It's not going to happen, though, is it, Ann?
The other thing to remember, though, Larry, is that there's some other elections taking place. The Senate is very, very close. The House is very, very close. I mean, regardless of what happens later on. Both of those bodies are going to be so tightly between the two parties, and this election being this close, believe me, government ain't going to act a whole lot.
The key then for the country is, what do we do, Howard? Let's take this as a fact. Half this country is in one corner and half is in another. How do they govern?
Well, they do govern because the country's built that way. And
compromise.
Well, perhaps, but I think whichever man is elected president will have a period when there is cooperation with the Congress, and he'll have his opportunity. Some call it the first 100 days, but anyway, he'll have a period when he'll have his own mandate, and he'll be able to do a lot. And the country will demand that. I think if Congress and the president, whoever that president is, decides to go to war instantly, that the country would come down on them like a ton of brick. I just don't think it'll work that way.
What do you think?
Well, I think the interesting question is, what is the message that the public and the voters are trying to send? And the message is, to a certain extent, we don't want too much governing. We don't want anyone to have a mandate. There is enough uncertainty. Well, we want the military. We want the checks to go out and the military to function, but the programs that were presented by Bush and Gore, no one swallowed them whole. No one has a mandate, and maybe that's the essence of what's being said here. Let's be careful with new programs and new spending, and it's the old Howard Baker theme, less government.
Careful doesn't forge great leadership, though, does it?
Well, it doesn't.
It's careful leadership.
Yeah, it doesn't allow you to step out and become a great leader. It does allow you, though, to be selective in the issues that you're going to push, and I think that that's what's going to happen whichever one of these men becomes the president. They're going to refine these issues down to 1 or 2 or maybe 3, because it would be very difficult in a divided Senate and a divided House, as close as it is, to be able to go with any large, expansive program.
In a sense, then, Senator, the public is sending these 2 men a message.
Yeah, it is. The public sent a very clear message, and the message, in my view, was not much difference in what you're saying. Maybe technical differences in programs, but you're essentially saying the same thing. Not much difference in what you're proposing. There are significant differences, but that wasn't the determining factor. They chose this election on the basis, really, in my view, of who they instinctively thought would make a better president. And you know, Larry, that's as good a way to judge a presidential candidate as any. It's really better than issue papers. Do you trust this man? Do you want him to lead this country?
Woulda, shoulda, coulda. What are they going to say about Clinton?
Don't know.
What are they going to say about Hillary? We haven't discussed her. She's the only one tonight on any network where they carried her complete acceptance speech everywhere.
And at least the part I saw, she did not mention her husband, who was dutifully standing behind her, clapping.
What do you make of that story?
Well, it is a big victory for her. There were lots of doubters. She went and did it by the book. She really worked hard. She mastered New York. In that statement tonight, she kept, you know, it's not as if she's forgotten New York. She kept talking about New York, New Yorkers, naming county leaders, and so forth. So she learned how to win, and she's done it. And the hat should go off to her.
If we have an important call, we understand. Thanks to Ann Riches, Howard Baker, and Bob Woodward. We may be coming back, we may not, but we have an important call. Let's go to Judy.
All right, Larry, this is not a call in the presidential race. It is a very important call, and that is CNN is saying that the United States House of Representatives will remain in Republican hands. The Republicans will retain control of the House. Let's go right to Wolf Blitzer over at the Balance of Power Arena. Wolf.
Judy, the Democrats needed to gain at least 7 seats, net seats, in the House of Representatives in order to become the majority, in order to allow Dick Gephardt, the congressman from Missouri, to be the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. That has not happened. Stuart Rothenberg, tell us what's going on in the House of Representatives, why the Republicans are expected now to retain the majority.
Well, Wolf, overall, we have not that many seats that changed hands one way or the other, and the Republicans did surprisingly well in the East, enough to offset any late Democratic advantage in the West. So, for example, the Republicans picked up a seat in New York in the 1st Congressional District, in Western Pennsylvania in the 4th. It looks like a surprise win in Eastern Connecticut in the 2nd Congressional District, where Sam Gadenson may well go down. It looks like he has gone down. In New Jersey, it looks like Dick Zimmer has won that seat over Rush Holt. Zimmer, a former congressman, has come back to retake it from Holt in a close race. Congresswoman Pat Danner, a Democrat, retired in Missouri. Her son was unable to hold a seat for the Democrats. It looks like Republican Sam Graves has won it. And on the other hand, the Democrats just didn't pick up enough Republican seats. They picked up a district, Rick Lazio's district on Long Island, Suffolk County, the 2nd Congressional District, where the Republicans nominated an African-American woman. She lost. That's a Democratic pickup. And in Oklahoma's 2nd Congressional District, which we mentioned a while ago, at least it seems like days ago, doesn't it, Wolf? Other than that, seat in New Mexico, Mexico possibly, and some in California in the West, but just not enough takeaways by the Democrats.
And as a result of all of this, Dennis Hastert of Illinois will remain the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Well, that's for the Republican conference to decide, but absolutely, yes, the Republicans are going to keep control of the House of Representatives. They might have an additional seat or two. They might be down 2 or 3. We can't know quite yet. We're waiting for the West Coast to come in, but they're going to hold.
We've been waiting for an important race in the U.S. Senate. CNN can now call a winner in Washington State. Maria Cantwell, a major executive of the high-tech industry, defeating the Republican incumbent Senator Slade Gorton. This is not a huge surprise, but it does represent a net gain, of course, for the Democrats.
Absolutely, and it's actually the second time Slade Gorton has been defeated as an incumbent in a bid for re-election. Happened a number of years ago as well. The Democrats always thought they had a good chance here, but it was interesting. Both parties had very different polling. The Republicans were pretty sure that Slade Gorton was ahead and would win. The Democrats thought the same about Maria Cantwell. I guess the Democratic polling was better, and they were right.
So right now, as of now, the balance of power in the Senate, 49 Republicans, 47 Democrats, 4 seats in the U.S. Senate still up for grabs. Those seats are from Missouri, Michigan, Nebraska, and Montana. How do those states look right now, Stuart?
Well, again, if the Democrats have to get a sweep here, Montana is a particularly difficult race for them because it is a generally conservative and Republican state. That's a tough nut to crack. But right now in Michigan and Missouri, it's hard to tell. The Republicans could go 3 for 3, or the Democrats could go 3 for 3.
And that Missouri seat is especially interesting, almost unprecedented.
It's quite tight. It's a close race. Yeah, nobody knows exactly what to make of it, given the unusual circumstances. Ashcroft has been holding a narrow lead throughout the evening, but it's awfully close.
All right, let's take a look at the Senate balance of power, where it stands right now. There were, going into tonight, 35 Republican holdovers, 31 Democratic holdovers. So far, one tonight, 14 Republicans have been elected, 16 Democrats have been elected. As a result, the new total is this: 49 Republicans, 47 Democrats, 4 undecided seats. Those 4 undecided seats, once again, Missouri, John Ashcroft, the incumbent, against the late Mel Carnahan, the governor. In Michigan, Spencer Abraham against Debbie Stabenow. In Montana, Conrad Burns and Brian Schweitzer, still up in the air. And in Nebraska, Ben Nelson and Don Stenberg. That race in Nebraska has been an exciting race. Normally, Republicans seem to be the power in Nebraska, but the Democrat, in this particular case, Ben Nelson, he's still in the running.
Absolutely, but I think the reason Stenberg is doing so well is it's the Republicanism of the state in a presidential year. Republican insiders in Washington have actually been rather pessimistic about that race. Nelson, a former governor, was popular, lost to Chuck Hagel, you may remember a few years ago, has come back now. He's no longer a governor. He can run as a moderate Democrat. It's a difficult race for the Republicans, but I think there are a lot of Stenberg people that are shaking their finger at me and say, aha, we told you so. We told you this was going to be a close race, but I don't know whether he can win.
And let's take another close look at Montana. It's normally a Republican state. Conrad Burns, the incumbent Republican senator, facing a stiff challenge from Brian Schweitzer, a rancher. That race still too close to call.
Right, and Schweitzer, of course, used the issue of prescription drugs to his advantage early on to get a lot of earned media coverage, what we call free media, redefine this race. Burns was rather slow to respond, and I think Republicans are nervous about the seat. In the last few days, Republicans thought that their polling showed Conrad Burns with a slight uptick and were somewhat more hopeful.
All right, and we have a new race to call now in Vermont. We've been waiting a long time. The CNN can now call Governor Howard Dean, the incumbent, the winner, beating Ruth Dwyer in what was a very, very close race. Howard Dean had signed into law in Vermont what's called the same-sex marriage provision, yet he went on to be reelected. Well,
this was a 3-way race, and the real question was whether Howard Dean was going to get the 50% of the vote that he needed, according to state law, to be reelected, or whether the race would be thrown to the state legislature. As you mentioned, this civil unions issue was quite controversial. The governor had been popular outside of that issue and apparently was able to hang on.
So there's basically, as we're looking at the Senate, the House, the governor's races, no huge surprises, but there's still some doubt as far as the U.S. Senate is concerned. The House of Representatives will remain in a Republican majority. The Senate still up for grabs.
The one thing we can say, Wolf, there has not been a major sea change in American politics in the House or the Senate.
All right, Stuart Rothenberg, thank you. Now back to the desk.
All right, Wolf.